This week's parsha is Parshas Shelach. The parsha talks about the Meraglim, and the parsha says that Midbar in Perek Yudal Pasuk of Tes Midbar azeh yiplu figrechem v'chol pekudechem l'chol misparchem miben esim shana v'mala, from 20 years and older. Asher halinoisem alai, that complained to me. So Rashi says, miben esim shana lohaitzi shiftei shel Levi she'ein pekudeya miben esim, that Shevet Levi was not included because they weren't counted from 20 years old. And also there's a famous Rashi back in Bamidbar, Rashi, Perek Aleph Pasuk Mem Tes. Rashi is discussing, the Pasuk says, Aches Mate Levi Loi Sifgard, you should not count Mate Levi. So Rashi, Davar Acher, Tzafa HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Sha'asida Lamed Gzeira Al Kol HaNimnin, Mi Ben Esim Shana V'Mala, She'yamusu Bamidbar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that the Gzeira was going to be on everyone who was counted from 20. Amar Al Yiyu Elu B'chlal Lefi Shehem Shali. They should not be included because they are mine. And it's really a Gemara in Bava Basra, Kuf Chaf Aleph on Beis. The Gemara says over there, Beferish also, Loi Nigzera Gzeira Al Shevet Levi, T'chsiv, Bamidbar Azeh Yiplu Pegrechem, L'chol Pekudechem, L'chol Misparchem, Mi Ben Esim Shana V'Mala, Mi Shepekuda Mi Ben Esim, Yotza Shiftei Shel Levi, Shepekuda Mi Ben Shleishim. That it's from a month old. That's how the Rashbam learns, not from 30 years old. So I always understood, and I think most people understand, is that Shevet Levi, since they were counted differently, so they're not included in this Gzeira. They're counted from a month, and the Gzeira was set on everyone who was counted from 20 years old. That's how you understand Pashup Shah in these Gemaras in Rashi, in the two Rashis, and it's Rashi's really coming from a Rashi, and Bamidbar is really coming from a Bamidbar Rabbah also. So that's how I always understood. But Lamaisa was bothering me this year that the Gemara in Shabbos, famous Gemara in Shabbos, Peites Amabeis, HaKadosh Baruch Hu went to all the Avos that they should daven for their kids. And so he went to Avram Avinu, and Avram Avinu said, no, they were chatu. Yaakov Avinu said, no, they were chatu, so they deserve it. So then HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes to Yitzchak, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Banecha chatuli. And Yitzchak answers, Amar Levanu Ribono Shel Olam, Banai v'lo banecha, b'shah she'ikdimu lefanecha nasa lenishma karasa lahem b'ni b'chayri, achshav banai v'lo banecha. V'ayid Zakt Yitzchak Avinu, Kama Chatu, how much did they sin? Kama Shneisav Shal Adam, how long does a person live? Shivim Shana, he lives 70 years. Dal Esrin, Delay Anshis Alayu, take away 20 that you don't get punished for. Pashalu Chamshin, there's 50 left, and Yitzchak Avinu makes a ganze cheshbon with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zakt Rashi, Dal Esrin Delay Anshis Luhu. Shekain Matzinu B'dar HaMidbar, Shalai Anash HaKadosh Baruch Hu Elamichaf Shana U'Maila. You find by in the Midbar, Zakt Rashi, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu only punished from 20 years old. D'chsiv by Midbar Azeh Yiplu B'greichem Iben Chav Shana V'Mala Asher Linoisem Alai. So Rashi says the Makar that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not punish Misa B'dei Shemaim under 20 years old is Gufa from our Parsha, from Dora Midbar, from our Pasuk. Is Aibazei, the Chayra Mi Ben Chav Shana Umayla has nothing to do with who was counted. It's because Misa B'dei Shemaim is not on less than 20 years old. So if that's the case, so then why was Shevet Levi excluded? L'chayra, Rashi Gufa says the Makar, Rashi in Gemara Shabbos Peitas Ambe says the Makar that you don't get Misa B'dei Shemaim under 20 is from our Parsha, from the Meraglim. If that's the case, the reason why the punishment was set on 20 people who are 20 years old and above is because under 20 is because they can't get Misa B'dei Shemayim. It has nothing to do with that's who was counted. They were counted from 20. So if that's the case, so then why should Shevet Levi be excluded? That's one ha'ara. Another ha'ara is that the Gemara in Bava Basra as well, Daf Kuf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, says that Chamisha Asar Ba'av. Why is Tu Ba'av a Yom Tov? So the Gemara says, comes out, Yom Shekalu by Meisei Midbar. It's the day that the people in the Midbar stop dying. The Amar Mar Ad Shloi Kalu Meisei Midbar Lahaya Dibur Moshe. That until everyone died, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't really talk to Moshe. He did, but in different Eifanim. So Taisvis over there's a big Taisvis. Taisvis asks a bunch of kashas. One of them is, L'chayra, everybody died already, and everyone who needed to die had to die already because they already lived until they were 60 years old. V'oid, why is this a simcha that everyone died already? Fine, so everyone who had to die died. So why is that a simcha? And Taisus asks another kasha, why did they dig graves if they weren't supposed to die? Everybody knew if he was from 20 to 60. So Zokt Taisus B'Shem Rabbeinu Tam, that a chiddush, that in the last year there were really supposed to be people that were going to die, and there was nispatel the gzeira from them, and there's around 15,000 and a little bit that were left over that were supposed to die. Azay Zokt Rabbeinu Tam, but he's very bothered that Lamaisa, the pasuk says v'loy noisar mehem ish. There's no one left. There was no one left. So Rabbeinu Tam ein sham b'taisvus. So Zakta Briskerov. Briskerov brings a fascinating medrash. The medrash says like this. It's Bamidbar Rabba Tes Zayin Ois Chaf Gimel. Zakta medrash. Mi ben esim shana v'mayla. From 20 years and up, Bein shahaya imayim be'etza, bein shaloi haya imayim be'etza, loi haya nichnas. That whether the person was part of the original etza or not, he got the punishment. Pachos mi ben chaf, if somebody was less than 20, v'loi hevi shtei sayris, and he did not bring, he did not have the simanim of gadlus. So then, Bein shahaya imayim be'etza, ubein shalaya imayim be'etza haya nichnas. There's no gzeira on him. But zok the medrash v'im hevi shtei sayris, if he has a simon of gadlus, v'hu pachis michaf, im haya imayim be'etza loy haya nichnas. Even if he's less than 20 years old, if he was part of the etza, he did not go into Eretz Yisrael. The gzeira was on him also. As long as you're 13 and you're hevi shtei sayris, the gzeira was on you. And the Brisker Rav says that's the pshat in the pasuk v'chol menatzai lo yeruha, that anyone who was married in me is not going to see it, even those who are less than 20 years old, as long as they were with the Eitzah. And he's masber a little bit more in the parsha, the psukim lefizeh. Zok the Brisker Rav, lefizeh, the Gemara is geshmak yom shekalu by meisei midbar. Yeah, because there were still people who are under 20 who were supposed to die, and they didn't. It stopped. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mevatel the gzeira on them, and the pasuk of v'lo noisar mehem ish, that's going on everyone who was counted between 20 and 60. But the people that were under 20 that were with imayim be'etza, that were part of the etza, they avada should have died, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mevatel the gzeira. So the Brisker Rav goes on to explain a sifra with this, also in Parshas Matis, he's busy with this sifra. But what do you see, this Brisker Rav, he's bringing this medrash, that even under 20, as long as imayim be'etza, then you got the gzeira on you. So if that's the case, then my whole world is shattered. We always understood in all our lives that only somebody who was part of the counting from 20 to 60 is part of the gzeira, and that's why Shevet Levi is excluded, because they weren't counted from between 20 and 60. They were counted from Ben Chaydish, from already a month old. But like this medrash, the medrash is saying befeish that even if you're under 20, you got as long as it was imayim be'etza. So then why was Shevet Levi excluded? L'chayra mamish needs a hezber. Okay. So we'll get back to this kasha. The pasuk in this week's parsha says famous words that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said Vayomer Hashem salachti kidvarecha. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe, I'm forgiving you like your words. So the Ramban learns, in the previous pasuk, he brings down this pasuk, and the Ramban says that salachti kidvarecha doesn't mean here, I've forgiven you, I've forgiven Klal Yisrael. It means I'm doing like what you asked. What did Moshe Rabbeinu ask? Moshe Rabbeinu asked that Klal Yisrael shouldn't be killed at once, and that Klal Yisrael's kids should be able to go into Eretz Yisrael and not be fully destroyed. Zok the Eibishter salachti kidvarecha, that exactly like you said, I'm not going to kill them at once. I'm going to kill them slowly, and their banim will go into Eretz Yisrael. Zok the Ramban that in Mishnah Torah and Devarim, Moshe Rabbeinu says by the Maisa Egel, he says that he tells Klal Yisrael, I daven for you. And he says exactly what the tefillah was. And he also says in Devarim, in Mishnah Torah, he says what the tefillah was for Aaron. But by the Meraglim, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't say that he davened for them in Devarim. Why taka not, Zok the Ramban? Why not? Because Moshe Rabbeinu was scared that the banim who are going into Eretz Yisrael are going to have tainus on him. Because what did he daven for? He didn't daven for a full slicha. He davened just that Klal Yisrael shouldn't be destroyed at once, and that the banim should go into Eretz Yisrael. So Moshe Rabbeinu was scared that Klal Yisrael was going to be upset. So Memela, he didn't say in Devarim. So that's how the Ramban learns this pasuk of Vayomer Hashem salachti kidvarecha, that it's going on the Meraglim, which is Parshas Shelach, because that's where it says it. It says it over here by the Meraglim. So that's the Parshas Shelach and the pasuk. But Lamaisa, there's a Gemara in Yevamis Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. The Gemara says that all 40 years that Klal Yisrael were in the Midbar, the Ruach Tzefainis did not come. The northern wind did not come. My time, as the Gemara, Ibayis Ema Mishum de Nizayfim Hava, because they were Kemat in Cherem. Zok Rashi, Ibayis Ema Mishum de Nizayfim Hayu. Why was Klal Yisrael in Cherem? Mi Maisa Ha'egel. They weren't ready for this. That's how Rashi learns. Zok Taisvis Nizayfin Hayu Amar Rabbeinu Yitzchak Mi Maisa Meraglim. From the Maisa Meraglim. That's why they were in Cherem. V'loy K'moshe Pirish B'kunshus Mi Maisa Egel. Not like Rashi says Maisa Egel. Why? Shari Mocha Lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'amar Lahem Salachti. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Meichel them, and he said Salachti. Sha'acher Kach Nasa Mishkan V'hishra Shchinase B'neyan. Because afterwards, you see, they got slicha. Well, how do you know they got slicha? Because they got the Mishkan, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Masha Shechina B'neyan. So Taisus over here says that when did HaKadosh Baruch Hu say Salachti? HaKadosh Baruch Hu said it by the Maisa Egel. B'emes, you find that the Rishash in Medrash Rabbah, Parshat and Aleph, Ois Daled, brings many places that Chazal learn that this pasuk of Vayomer Hashem salachti kidvarecha is really by the Maisa Egel, and it happened on Yom Kippur. There's a lot of midrashim, and I'll just say one of them. The Medrash is talking in Parshas Eikev. It says, "Kevan shehisker Moshe's chus avos miyad amar le salachti kidvarecha." So we have here Divrei Chazal that say that this pasuk of Vayomer Hashem salachti kidvarecha is referring to the Chet Egel, which is very shver, because the pasuk over here says Vayomer Hashem salachti kidvarecha, says it by the Maisa Meraglim, and that's the Rishash over there in Medrash Rabbah and Shemais. He says it's Mamash Apella. And Taisvis over here, Daf Ayin Beis, that learns that Salachti is going on the Maisa Egel, is Mamash Apella. So Rabbeinu Bachya in our parsha, he says like this. He says, "Hevinu Rabbi Seinus al pasuk zeh b'harbe mekaymes b'talmud shal Maisa Egel nemar." Chazal always say that it's referring to the Maisa Egel, and he says, and that's what they Chazal always say, Yom Kippurim ha'yom slicha v'chapara she'amar lo salachti kidvarecha avoina ha'egel. Aval avoin zeh shel meraglim eini selech. But I'm not being meichel this aveira of the meraglim. And he ends off, v'chein toimar shal avoina egel nemar af al pishu nichta b'avoina meraglim. So Rabbeinu Bachya doesn't seem so bothered. He says, yeah, it was really said about the Chet Egel, even though it was written here by the Meraglim. So, the Shitim Kubetzes in Baba Kama Pei Beis Amud Aleph, Taisus over there brings a Seder Olam, also that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Vayem Hashem salachti kidvarecha, also on Yom Kippur for the Aveir of the Egel. And he asked the same kasha, Vim Taimar, Frek Deshita, V'aloi al Maisa Meraglim Ksiv, Hai Kra B'Shana Shniya. This was said by the Maisa Meraglim. So he says one pshat, which I'm not really sure what he's trying to say. But then he brings, V'Rav Reb Yehuda, Mefarish Shekra, D'chol zeh midivrei Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom. All of this is from Moshe Rabbeinu's words. Shahaya Aimer Lamakim Slach Na Lavaina Amazek Asher Nasasa Lahem B'Yom HaKippurim Shalishtakad V'Amarta Li Salachti Kidvarecha. So it's a fascinating pshat, and the Daskenim by us says the same pshat, that this was all part of Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillah. Slach Na Lavaina Amazek Goyda Chastecha V'Asher Nasasa Lamazem Yimitzayim Vadheina. Zakt Moshe Vayom Hashem Salachti Kidvarecha, and you told me then Salachti Kidvarecha. It was all part of Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillah. So that's a mahalach to answer what this pasuk is doing here. If everybody's learning that it's referring to the Cheta Egel and it was on Yom Kippur, so why is this pasuk by the Meraglim? So it was all part of Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillah. So it was bothering me a shtickle that L'chayra, why is Moshe Rabbeinu? I think this is Shver Stamazai, but why is Moshe Rabbeinu bringing up another chet that Klal Yisrael did? Yeah, and Grada the Eibishter was Michael that chet. If you're begging from someone to be Michael you don't say, oh, remember the time I ba'aveled you? Oh, and you were Michael me? You don't say that. You don't want to bring that up. Why are you bringing that up? That's not something you should want to say. So that's what was bothering me. I saw in the Sefer Megadim Chadashim, he brings from the Rishash in Chagiga Vava Mabeis, and the Gemara over there says that there's a pasuk that in Amos, I think it is, Hazvachim mincha higashtem li b'midbar arbaim shana beis Yisrael, right? And Rashi learns the pshat in the Gemara is that you couldn't have brought karbanos because you were in cherem. So the Gemara answers, Shiftei shalevi shaloi avdu avodah zara heini krivu oisa. They're the ones that were makriv because they weren't avodah avodah zara. So what do you see from here? You see that Klal Yisrael was in cherem from the Maisa Egel, not like what Taisus is saying that on the Maisa Egel we said Salachti. So l'chayra frekter Rishash that this Gemara is a beferish Gemara like Rashi, and it's very schwer to say that the reason why Shevet Levi was not the Gemara says here that Shiftei Shel Levi Shloi Avdu Avodah Zara Heini Krivu Eisa. So it sounds like that the Cherem was because of the Maisa Egel, not because of the Maisa Meraglim. If it was the Maisa Meraglim, then it should have said Shevet Levi Shel Levi that didn't do the Maisa Meraglim. So that's the kasha of the Rishash. So to answer this, you have to go back to Rashi in Bamidbar, in Parshas Bamidbar, Perek Aleph Pasuk Memtar. Zok Rashi, the same Rashi we read already. Tzav HaKadosh Baruch Hu Sha'asid Olam Gzeir Al Kol Aninu Mi Ben Asim Shana V'Mala She'yamusa Bamidbar. Omar Zakt HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Al Yu Elu B'chlal, Lefi Shehem Shali, Shaloi Ta'u Ba'egel, because they did not make a mistake with the egel. So, right away, the Re'aim asks, it's brought in the Sifsei Chachamim, that why did Rashi say Shaloi Ta'u Ba'egel? Rashi should have said Shaloi Ta'u Ba'meraglim. Where the Gzeir was in the Meraglim. The Gzeir wasn't by the egel. What's going on? Was tutzachta? Zok the Re'aim, al pi Rashi in our parsha, that Rashi says a moedik azach, which is mamish like Pashup Shat. Zok Rashi. Rashi's bothered that why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu say you need 40 years? L'chayr you should only need 39 because Klal Yisrael was already 1 year into the midbar. Zok Rashi. V'shana rishayna haisa b'chlal. V'af al pi shekadma l'shiluach hameraglim, even though it was already before the meraglim. L'fi shemisha asu es ha'egel also gzeira zu b'machshava. When Klal Yisrael did the egel, really HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give them this einish. Ela shehimtin lahem asher tismali sa'asam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu waited until they tismali sa'asam means that it was full, meaning they did more aveiros. V'zeu shenemar uv'yom pakti upakadati aleim chatasam. That on the day that I remember, which is the Meraglim Zok Rashi, I'm going to remember their other chet. V'af kan nemar. Also here it says tisu es avoinoi seichem, plural. Why is there two? Shtei avoinoi shel egel v'shel tluna. It's the ma'ase egel and the ma'ase of the meraglim. So zok the Sifsei Chachamim that lefi this, what Rashi's saying over here, Shalei Tohu Ba'egel, is that Avada the Leviim did the chet of the Meraglim. Avada they did the chet of the Meraglim. So why over here Shalei Tohu Ba'egel? Why should they not be included? Because the einish that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave on the Meraglim was the einish for both of the Chatayim. Once Klal Yisrael did the oven of the Meraglim, they got the oven of the Chet Egel also. They got punished for it. So that's what Rashi's saying. Shalei Tohu Ba'egel. They didn't make a mistake in the Egel. Memela, they shouldn't deserve the punishment of the Meraglim because they don't have both. Frek the Sifsei Chachamim. Abam Bekasha. The Rashi Beferish in Devarim, Rashi in Devarim Aleph Chav Gimel says, Beferish, the pasuk says, Vayita be'enai hadavar ve'ekach mikem shnei maser anashim ish echad lashavet. One person per shevet. Zok Rashi, Magid shalei haya Shevet Levi imaim. Shevet Levi was not part of the chet. So l'chayra, the Sifsei Chachamim asks on himself that what's going on over here, and the way how he explains Rashi over there is that what does Rashi need a pasuk to tell me that they weren't included? There was 12 Nesiim, there was no Nasi from Shevet Levi, so of course they didn't do it. So Zakt the Sifsei Chachamim that they weren't even part of the Eitzah. Shevet Levi wasn't even part of the Eitzah. Even the Eitzah to send the Meraglim, they weren't part of. Yeah, Avada, they weren't part of the Nesiim. They weren't even part of the Eitzah. So what's going on over here? So Zok the Sifsei Chachamim that you have to say like this. You have to say that yes, Shevet Levi was not part of the Eitzah. They didn't send a Nasi. But when the Meraglim came back and the Meraglim told Klal Yisrael how bad Eretz Yisrael is, Shevet Levi was included. Vatef Kala Eda, that includes Shevet Levi. They taka did cry. And he says like this, it answers, the Welt asks, well, what's going on over here? So what that they weren't counted with the rest of Klal Yisrael, but they didn't do the chet. So if they didn't do the chet, so then they don't deserve the punishment. So Zak the Sifsei Chachamim that the pshat is because they did do the chet. If they did the chet, they weren't part of the Eitzah, they weren't part of the sending, but they cried. Memela, if they cried, they were part of that Chet of the Meraglim. That's what Rashi says. Shalei to ba'egel. They didn't make a mistake in the egel, but avada they were part of the Meraglim. As they zok the Sifsei Chachamim, it's b'shem their aim. A lot of it's b'shem their aim. So I was just thinking a little bit. Why Taka was Shevet Levi? Why did they not send anyone? What's Taka the Pshat? Why did they not send anyone? So I saw that in this week's parsha, when it says the Nesiim, so it says Lamate Yosef, Lamate Menashe, but by Ephraim it does not say Lamate Yosef. So what's Pshat? So the Ramban back in Bamidbar, Perek Aleph Pasuk Lamed Beis says that the reason is because since Ephraim did not say Lashon Hara, so he's not miyuchas to Yosef. Menashe, who said the Lashon Hara, is miyuchas to Yosef because Yosef said Lashon Hara. So it's stelling to Menashe to Yosef because Yosef said Lashon Hara, and Rabbeinu Bachya brings it over here also. He brings it in our parsha. He brings it afinar. A lot of times you find that Rabbeinu Bachya brings the Rambans that are other places. He brings them. He brings them where they apply mamish. But I heard from a friend of mine, Ramoshi Gold, b'shem Rabbi Raditsky, and I also saw Rabbi Yabaruch says mamish Oised Davar. He says the same thing. Now, what was the tachlis of the Meraglim? Why did Klal Yisrael want to send? So for two reasons. There's two reasons why they wanted to send. First of all, they wanted to send to check out the land for war. And second of all, they wanted to check out the land to see if it's good. So there was two mataris. And he says like this, he says that we know Shevet Levi, there's really 13 Shvatim in Klal Yisrael. So when do we count Shevet Levi? When do we not count Shevet Levi? So the Gemara in Hariyas Davav Amabez says that for Nachla things, you don't count Shevet Levi because they weren't part of the Nachla. But for everything else, you do count Shevet Levi. So Zakta B'Alei Baruch, that for the sending for war, so that Shevet Levi was included. Ba'etzem, they should have been included. And that's why Lamate Yosef, Lamate Menashe. Because for war, it should have only been one Shevet, Yosef. But for checking out the land of Eretz Yisrael to see if it's good, there Shevet Levi was not included because Shevet Levi does not have a Nachla in Eretz Yisrael. So there it's Lamate Ephraim. There it's Ephraim. So he says, Rabbi Baruch says, and Rabbi Rudinsky said the same thing, that when the Meraglim came back from Eretz Yisrael, who talked first? Kalev. What did Kalev say? And Yeshua said nothing. It was only Kalev, Vayas Kalev. But when Yeshua and Kalev later on, when they're talking about the land, if it's good or not, there you have Yeshua and Kalev said, Taiva Aretz Ma'id Ma'id. Why? What's the pshat? Because like this vart, that Yeshua's only tachlis was to check out the land. But Kalev was also for Milchama. Kalev, Yeshua had nothing to do with Milchama. Ephraim had nothing to do with the Milchama. So, if this was the matar of sending out the Meraglim, so the Cheskuni over here says that what's the pshat? Shevet Levi not Eila Shmoisa Anashim Mishevet Levi loy nishtalach Meragel shaloi haya loy chelek ba'aretz. The reason why Shevet Levi didn't send a nasi, a Meragel, is because they didn't have a chelik in the land. So, and really, the Cheskuni says earlier in Bamidbar also that really Shevet Levi didn't go out to war either. So it doesn't stim so gishmak with this vart, but Memela makes sense that Shevet Levi wasn't even part of the Eitzah, because Shevet Levi had no invested interest here. Shevet Levi didn't have a chelik in the land. They really ba'etzim weren't part of Milchama. So Shevet Levi, that's why they didn't send. So it makes sense. They were not part of the sending. So now that we understand what the reason why Shevet Levi was not part of the Eitzah was, because they had no invested interest here in the land. But Lamaisa, we're saying from the Re'im that Shevet Levi Avada did the Chet of the Meraglim. The only reason they weren't punished on the Chet of the Meraglim is because they didn't do the Maisa Egel. And since the punishment here from HaKadosh Baruch Hu was for both, it was for the Chet of the Meraglim and for the Chet of the Egel, Memela Shevet Levi wasn't punished. So with this, the Megadim Chadashim says you can answer the kasha of the Rishash. What was the kasha of the Rishash? The kasha of the Rishash was that the Gemara in Chagiga Vav Amabei says it's a befeish raya that the cherem on Klal Yisrael was because of the cheta egel, and not like Taisus that it was the chet of the Meraglim. Why? Because the Gemara says that Shevet Levi brought all the karbanis l'fi shaloi avdu avodah zara. That sounds like the cherem was of the Chet Egel. But like this Re'im, Zak the Megadim Chadashim, that what it means is, just like what Rashi says in Bamidbar, the Fishalai Toba Egel, that the reason why Shevet Levi wasn't in cherem was because Avada they did the Chet of the Meraglim. But what they didn't do is they didn't do the Chet Egel. So Avada the cherem was the cherem of the Meraglim, like Taisva says. But the reason why Shevet Levi wasn't part of that punishment was because they didn't do the Avodah Zarah, because they didn't do the Chet Egel, they weren't part of it. So that the Gemara is not a raya that the cherem was because of the Maisa Egel. It's the same exact lashon as Rashi in Bamidbar. So that's how he answers. This answers also what we were asking, that why would Moshe Rabbeinu bring, like the Shittim Gebetzes is learning and the Das Kainim is learning, they're learning that the pasuk of Vayema Hashem Salachti Kidvarecha was all part of Moshe Rabbeinu's words. So we asked, why would Moshe Rabbeinu bring up something that you don't do? You don't bring up, we ba'aveled you, but you were meichelas. The Tarot says Moshe Rabbeinu knew this Yesod of Rashi, that the Einish was only because of the Chet Egel and the Chet of the Meraglim together. Zak Moshe Rabbeinu, you were meichelas on the Chet, you were meichel Klal Yisrael on the Chet Egel. So if you're meichel Klal Yisrael on the Chet Egel, is Oibazeh, the Meraglim's not enough. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillah was. It's half of a fella. It's amazing. Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that by the Chet Egel. That's where it was said. Unlike the Rishonim are saying the Shita and the Das Kainim is that Vayem Hashem, that was all part of Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillah. Why did he bring it up? I'll tell you why he brought it up. Because he brought it up because Moshe Rabbeinu knew that there was the only way Klal Yisrael was going to get punished was with both Chataim. It's mamish, it's Miyushav Shapir. And with this you could answer one more kasha. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin Kuf Tesam Beis. The Gemara says that B'Saidam Yaakov Avinu David in his tefillah, B'Saidam, when he said to Shimon and Levi, he said B'Saidam al Tavei Nafshi uV'Kalam al Techad Kavodi. So Rashi in Chumash learns B'Saidam al Tavei Nafshi. That's referring to the mice of Zimri, because that was Shevet Shimon. But the Gemara Mefurish in Sanhedrin says B'Saidam al Tavei Nafshi Elu Meraglim Frekta Marsha. Shevet Levi didn't do the Chet of the Meraglim. What's going on? What's Tutzach? The Marsha says, Elamai, you're going to say it's Shimon by himself, just like the Maisa Zimri, but why is Shimon why is he being singled out? And so the Marsha says, Ulai Haya Kabbalah Biyadam, fascinating Marsha, that Shimon was the instigator, Shevet Shimon was the instigator. But so I was thinking, and afterwards I found Rabbi Yitzchak Saratskin and Rinas Yitzchak over there in Sanhedrin. He says that like this Re'im, it's Pasha Miyushav, because Shevet Levi were part of the Chet of the Meraglim. So, Avada, it's still Tzarech Bir Abyssal, why Yaakov Avinu singled out Levi and Shimon for this, that B'Saidim al Tavei Nafshi, Dafke, Shimon and Levi. But Avada Shevet Levi was part of the Chet Hameraglim. So I just want to go back all the way to what we started, that we were handling, that why was Shevet Levi not included in the punishment of the Meraglim? Because Parshas Shelach, we always understood, was because they were counted, they weren't part of the count from 20 years old, which is what the Gemara says. But we asked that l'chayr, it had nothing to do with that. It was Misa B'dei Shamayim. It was only from 20, and that's why it's 20 years old. And then we saw that the Briskerov brings a medrash that really, if you're 13 already and you Hevish Sars and you were Imayim Be'etza, then Avada, you were part of the Einish, Mamish, a mind-blowing medrash that it's not only from 20 years old. So then, Oibazeh, why wasn't Shevet Levi included? So I think, like all this, it's geschmack, because Shevet Levi wasn't included because lo hayu mayim be'etza, like we said from the Sifsei Chachamim. The lashon of the medrash is the lashon of the medrash is clear, that the medrash says imayim be'etza. It has to be that they were part of the etza. Shevet Levi was not part of the Eitzah, like we said. Like the Sifsei Chachamim said, and like we were masber, because they, like the Cheskuni says, they didn't have a chelik, so they weren't part of the Eitzah B'chlal. So what did Chazal mean that Shevet Levi wasn't part of the count? So Mamela, they didn't get the punishment. It has to mean something more, that if Shevet Levi would have been part of the same counting, then just the Gzeira would go on them as well, but not a thing that only the Gzeir was only said on people from 20 to 60 that were part of the counting. Just has to be that Shevet Levi had to be separated, but it's not that the counting was from 20 to 60, because Avada, even if you're under 20, you were part of the punishment. So I just saw that Shmuel Yankiv in the Sefer Zeis Liyakiv, he says, Kumt Dais, the fact, he just brings out a Moridik Nekuda, that Kumt Dais, the fact that Shevet Levi didn't have a chelik in Eretz Yisrael. Why didn't they have a chelik in Eretz Yisrael? So the famous, the Psukim and the Rambam says it also, Klor, that it's because they were Huvdal, they were separated to be Oived Hashem, to be Oivdei Hashem. So Kumt Dais, that is what saved them from the Gzeira. Because Shevet Levi was separated from Klal Yisrael to be the Oivdei Hashem, and Memela, because they didn't have a Nachla in Eretz Yisrael, that is what saved them. So just his words, Nimtzenu l'meidim, the Mashaloi natu chelek ba'aretz bavur avdalasam la'aveidas Hashem, ze atzmai garam lahem sheyichnesu la'aretz. It's mamish punkt fakert. Because they didn't have a chelik in Eretz Yisrael, that's why they were zeicha to go into Eretz Yisrael. So he said to teach you that you don't lose anything with Avodas Hashem, because Gufa, because they didn't have a chelik, they weren't part of the Gzeira. Which Gzeira should they have been a part of? They should have been a part of the under 13. And I just thought it was a beautiful machshava from Shmuel Yankiv. Shkayach.